was an effort to have Ghislaine Maxwell simply exonerate Donald Trump, regardless of whether it is truthful or not. That is obviously her motive right now, is to get a benefit, and that could be up to and including, as you mentioned, a full pardon. And the only way that you can really assure that she was telling the truth is to have people who really know the evidence. And we've talked about this, which is that is not the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, who is new to the case and doesn't have career people there at all. So it's just a highly, highly suspicious circumstance.
And Andrew, this is the same Trump Justice Department that just said a few weeks ago that there's absolutely nothing more in the Epstein case, that they've examined all of the Epstein files and there's nothing else to pursue, there's nothing else to investigate, there's nothing else to report on. That was the Pam Bondi official public report about the Epstein files.
Well, I have to say, personally, I just don't believe that. It is something, if you heard that from the career people who know this case inside out. But are we really supposed to believe, and I don't, that the only two people who participated in this are Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, that there were no other people who participated at all? And I think one sort of red herring here is this idea that there's no quote unquote client list. Whether it's, there's a piece of paper that says client list at the top of it, it seems impossible to think that the FBI on this case and the prosecutors on this case didn't put together a list of everyone who they thought was complicit with Mr. Epstein and with Ms. Maxwell, whether you call it a client list or not. And so I think there's just a lot more to come out, and I don't think we're being, told the truth about what's happened.
Christopher O'Leary, if you were working a case like this with the FBI and you've worked in the New York office where a lot of this work was done, what kind of lists would you expect to find in the Epstein files?
Well, I think Andrew hits on the point. Maybe there's not a list that, Jeffrey Epstein was keeping or Ghislaine Maxwell was keeping. However, any investigator, any agent that's working in this case is going to identify the close associates of the subject of the investigation, and then start determining what's the nature of that relationship. When were they co-located in a place where criminal activity was happening? And so those individuals might have been there innocently, but you would still want to dig deeper. So one thing that jumps out at me, and I was discussing this with a colleague earlier, is I would like to know, was the president interviewed as part of this investigation? And I don't think that's been answered yet. I don't think it's really been asked by that many people. It would be unusual for the types of investigations that I worked or that my fellow agents and investigators worked, that we would not have tried to approach that close associate and see if they were willing to cooperate. And if they weren't, then it begs the question, why? And I don't think we've seen that yet. Is it unusual that the president's name would be found in these files? No, if he was a close associate. It would be unusual if there wasn't further investigation.
So I asked you this in an office the other day here in the building about, if you were working this case in the New York office, the FBI, and you came across the New York Magazine profile of Donald Trump saying, I've known him for 15 years, he's a terrific guy, he likes beautiful women, especially on the younger side. If you read that article, would your to-do list include, let's go talk to Donald Trump?
It would be. And the first thing I think myself or other agents would do is try to find out more about him, try to find out, is he approachable? How do we go about this? So I would understand the person I want to go talk to and set the conditions for trying to do that in the best way. Will he be a cooperator, or is he possibly somebody that we should be looking at, more on the investigative side, and possibly he's involved in this somehow. So you would do that. You would really do your homework before, just going approach him. But you would be negligent if you did not take that approach, if you did not actually try to speak with Donald Trump back then. now the President of the United States.
And Andrew, no reporter who's ever gotten close to Donald Trump has ever asked him Chris's question, did the FBI interview you? Did you cooperate with this investigation in any way?
Absolutely. I am reminded, listening to the two of you, having worked on the Mueller investigation, of the president saying over and over again that he'd be happy to meet with us, only to have him renege and not do that. And, his unwillingness to testify at his first impeachment trial, at his second impeachment trial, in his criminal case. Of course, he's not required to, but that is not the standard one has for somebody who's in elected office. So it's an excellent question. This is exactly what, this is, by the way, just goes to the point that you would not have this interview conducted by somebody who does not know the case, unless you're trying to neutralize the witness or get a sort of false exculpatory statement. If you're really trying to get at the truth, you would have experienced prosecutors and agents who know this case do the interview, so that you actually get valuable information and not a whitewash.
Chris, if Donald Trump was interviewed in this investigation, what would the evidence of that be in the Epstein files? What would we find?
So FBI agents, one of the core skills of the FBI is to do interviews and interrogations. We talk to people all the time. All those notes would be memorialized in what we call an FD 302. It's just a transcript of exactly what was exchanged. That would absolutely be in the Epstein file. There's no doubt. That could be released immediately. And one thing I'll point out, having interviewed and interrogated countless people over the years, people who are innocent, generally when accused of something, are emphatic about their innocence. And they want to have you produce what's suspicious. And so if it was a file, innocent people will show me that file, point to me where you're saying I did something wrong. We'll go through it page by page. And innocent people tend to get really aggressive about this. People who are trying to cover something up tend to do the opposite or sidestep a question. And so if you look at his response just the other day when asked, was he told that his name was in the file, he tried to sidestep it. Traditionally speaking, and that doesn't mean that he's guilty of something, but traditionally speaking, that's not how innocent people respond to such a question.
And Andrew, we now have conclusive reporting that Donald Trump was, of course, told by Pam Bondi that his name appears in the Epstein files repeatedly, multiple times.
Look, that certainly gives an explanation for the flip-flop, where you have the administration saying that they're going to make everything public and they're going to be transparent about everything. And then the reporting is that lots of FBI agents were pulled from otherwise valid work and important work to go through these files to find every time that his name was mentioned. And so you're left to think that the reason for them changing their view with large political consequences as a result of it, having fomented this sort of conspiracy theory, is because his name is there. And you have Donald Trump's reaction to this, which is, very much sort of a very suspicious protesting too much. And so, it is really a confluence of sort of red flags that we have in front of us.
Andrew Weissman and Christopher O'Leary, thank you both very much for your invaluable expertise on this tonight. Really appreciate it.